Hi, everybody. My name is Dan Budak. I'm really excited to welcome you to our experiential learning webinar today. I am in absolutely gorgeous Vermont, South Royalton, Vermont. We're very grateful to have a sunny blue sky day, which are hard to come by sometimes this time of year. So very thrilled to have a wonderful day like this. I'm joined today by my colleagues, Ellen Doobie, who is our outreach and events coordinator, Shirley Crawford, who is our Assistant Director of Recruitment for the JD programs. And I'm going to hand it off right away to Beth Locker. I should probably say my name, and I'm the Director of Admissions here at Vermont Law and Graduate School. And I'm going to hand it over to Beth Locker. And Beth, we found your job title as Associate Dean for Experiential Learning, Director of the JD Externship Program, and Professor of Law. So without further ado, take it away.
Great. Thanks, Dan. Hi, everybody. Yeah, I have a few too many titles these days, but I am delighted to be here with you all. I really appreciate that so many of you put in the chat where you are from and which program you're thinking about. It really is nice to see that you're from so many different places. A special hello to the one from Grand Rapids, since I'm a Michigander by birth, and that is still definitely where a piece of my heart is. So I really, I do teach externships, and so I'm going to talk about that a bit because that could impact all of you. That's an option for every single one of our JD students. But I also want to talk much more broadly about experiential in general. That is something this school really prides itself on. And I absolutely, I'm going to tell you and give you an overview. There's for sure going to be time at the end for questions. But I am gonna close the chat for myself because it will distract me too much. But the other folks are gonna watch it, and so please feel free to put questions in the chat. Ellen or Dan or Shirley will interrupt me if there is a particularly timely question. I'm happy to respond, or you can raise your hand. And then again, we certainly will have question time at the end. So there's a number of things that I think are really important. This school has a really long history of deep involvement with experiential learning. It's something I'm super proud of. I love that I got to walk into this program that was so strong and just get to continue to shepherd it and help it grow. There's a whole bunch of different elements to experiential learning. And what we really want to do is make sure that in addition to all the traditional classroom learning, that when you walk out of here with your degree, you are ready to get to work. For a very long time, and still at a lot of other law schools, you gather a lot of information in the classroom, but you're not always prepared to actually put that into work. And so people get out and they get into their first job and they've never actually written a client engagement letter. They've never actually spoken in court. They've never drafted a contract. And they're kind of at a loss for what to do. And we don't want that to happen. And so there's a whole bunch of different things that we want to make sure happen. And so there is, and the thing I'm going to talk about the most is how you get experience through while you're earning credit, while you are taking courses that get you credit towards your degree. But there also are a whole set of other non-credit things you can do. We have very robust number of student groups. Some of us sort of shake our heads because it's not possible to attend all of the events that our students put on, but it's really exciting that there are so many student groups, and we work really hard to make sure that there are ways to engage for our students who are here in South Royalton and for our students who attend the program online in our hybrid program. And so that's been great. Student groups do all sorts of things. Some of them are subject matter focused, and others, tackle all sorts of other things, whether it's more identity based or all just some of it's activity based. We have a hiking group, we have a tabletop society that's focused on actually more like the board games and stuff because it's a way to make connection. So there's great ways like that. But then there are also the ones that are focused on things that are going to build your career, right? So focused on environmental justice, focused on public interest and public service type of things. First generation law students. So that group is really fantastic at helping build mentoring networks and things of that nature. Other ways outside of earning credit, you can work on projects with professors. We make sure we let you know about volunteer opportunities. Our career services office does a really great job with that. And then, especially for the residential students, because our residential students, if they are not doing a joint degree, have your summers to get internships. That's another great way to get experience. And our career services office is really great helping you set up those opportunities. But what I now want to talk about and focus on is what falls under sort of my purview, and that is the experiential learning piece that is for credit. Every ABA accredited law school in the country, students, in order to graduate with their JD, have to earn at least 6 credits of experiential education. And so you have to do that here at Vermont Law and Graduate School. But I'm really delighted that here, most of our students, the vast majority of our students, will earn way more than 6 credits. And you can do those experiential credits in 3 different ways. And now here's the piece. You've got to listen for a second because it's not exactly the same depending on which program you enter, whether it's the residential program or the online program. What I have really tried to do, and the school has done, is make sure that no matter which program you're in, you are going to have the opportunity to develop a really robust set of skills, and that you are going to be able to develop the skills to be an attorney who can handle trial or transactional work and handle legislative, policy, all the types of things, alternative dispute resolution. And so you may not get it exactly the same way, but you really are exposed to all of those skills. And so the 3 ways that our accreditors, the American Bar Association, allows us to offer those experiential credits are through law clinics, externships, and simulations. And what we have done is for those of you who are considering a residential JD program, your 2 options are going to be law clinics. Those are the ones that are here in South Royalton, because the professors are here in South Royalton and you would be practicing in the law clinic under their license. So they are right here with you. If you're an online hybrid JD student, there's the occasional time where a student might come to South Royalton for just 1 semester, say, to work in a clinic. That would be an option. It would be unusual, right? Because our online hybrid students are predominantly somewhere else in the country. But it's not out of the question. You could come. So our residential students are going to do clinics and externships, and our online hybrid JD students are going to do simulations or externships. And so let me talk about all of those things. I think it looked like I had from the chat, mostly the larger group of you is looking at the online hybrid program. So let me start by talking about the simulations. And so one of the real things we looked at with the online hybrid program, even more than it being about being online hybrid, is that it's a part-time evening program overwhelmingly. So many of the students who end up enrolling in our online hybrid JD program are working full-time, have families, have commitments that block them from being regularly available at set times during sort of a traditional 9 to 5 daily schedule. And that is also a piece of why the clinics are such a problem for the OHJDs. And so these simulations allow you, it's a 2-course block. You do it late in the program after you've really built some other knowledge and skills. And you're going to act like a new lawyer. And the professor for the course is going to be your client. And I'm actually really excited about this. You get in the first course transactional skills, and these essentially, I know transactional can be a really hard word for in the legal setting when you haven't even started law school yet, but it's sort of all of the non-court skills. It's going to be contract drafting. It's going to be negotiations on a bunch of stuff. It's going to be a lot of sort of the paper side of lawyering. And you're even going to do some of the stuff like you're going to draft an engagement letter to get started with this client. You're going to start thinking about what kind of lawyer do you want to be? What are you going to do? How are you going to engage with this client? And so you're going to start with this transactional piece. It's actually the way we're setting up this first time has to do with the client is an airplane parts manufacturer. I'll let you know that. And so there's a whole set of issues you work around with that. And then it's becoming increasingly important in our legal world. Very few matters actually end up in court. And so the other thing after the transactional skills is you're going to do some alternative dispute resolution. So you're going to get some really solid practice there. And again, all of this is done with the professor acting as the client. We have this really wonderful system online that uses a lot of video, a lot of really interactive elements, so that you really get to have a chance to practice and in this environment that's intentionally safe to make sure you can try out all these skills. And so that's that first course. You get to do the transactional and the alternative dispute resolution. And then in the second course, the second part of the simulation, the storyline continues. So you're still the same associate in the same firm, you still have the same client, but the story takes on a new element and you're going to get some litigation practice. And there's two different versions of litigation, really. There's civil litigation and there's criminal litigation, and you're actually going to get to do some of each. So that again, you really get a taste of all of it and you really get to build some skills. And also really importantly, when you walk out the door and you start interviewing, you can talk about all of the different things you've done. And you have the knowledge to help you, well, knowledge to talk, in a really educated way in your interviews, but also importantly, you've had the knowledge for yourself about which pieces you really liked. So many students get here and think, oh, I never want to do litigation, or I'm sure I want to do litigation. And it's only when they've actually tried it that they really truly know if it's right for them or not. So that's really the simulation piece that's huge. And that's at the core for a lot of the OHJD students experiential because it fits so well with their lives. The clinic piece, let me go there for a second, and I'll save externships for last, since that's what would easily apply to any student who chose it, whether they were residential or OHJD. Our clinic program is here in South Royalton right now. For both of these, I will say, we are working on ways to figure out how to make all three fully available to everybody over time. We're just not there yet. But here in South Royalton, we have 9 different clinics. I'm going to rattle off the names of them, but I'm always a little hesitant when I do that. And the reason is students hear the names. It's great because you're going to hear the subject matter that they cover. And that's a really important thing. Some of you are already looking at this school because of some of the areas where we are so strong. We have really outstanding environmental clinics, more than one. Almost any other school you look at, even if they are strong environmentally, they're going to have an environmental clinic, period. Maybe they have one other. And when I start rattling off the names, you're going to hear how deep we go environmentally. But I also want you to understand that one of the really great things our clinics do is over the stretch of the 9 different clinics, they cover all of these different skills I was just mentioning in the simulation courses. So maybe you're not the one who is the biggest energy law person, but what you are really excited about is the transactional work, or you really are interested in real estate law, then the energy clinic actually might be a spectacular fit for you, because our energy clinic is doing all of this really fascinating work on solar development. And a huge piece of that has been working on all of these transactional skills. And actually, they're also doing a lot of energy justice work. One of the big things they keep doing is working with actually low-income communities, in particular like people who are living in mobile home parks, helping them form cooperatives, because then they are able to work together to develop solar projects. And we do a lot of the legal work, our students do in that clinic, to put together all of the documentation necessary to help those people create their own solar array that can provide resources. So even if you weren't the energy law person, you could develop some really significant skills to manage that land purchase, to handle the permitting, and a lot of things like that. So that's just one example. But our clinics are, and then I'll give you some more examples of the type of stuff they do. We have a farmed animal advocacy clinic. We have an environmental advocacy clinic, an environmental justice clinic, a small business law clinic. We have our South Royalton Legal Clinic, which is actually sort of broken into a couple of different projects. It's a sort of a traditional legal aid clinic, but it has a veterans legal assistance project and a family law project within it. The energy clinic that I just mentioned, a transnational environmental law clinic, a food and agriculture law and policy clinic, and then our Center for Justice Reform Clinic, which also is sort of broken into two parts. Within that, there's a very significant, substantial immigration practice that is actually predominantly defensive immigration work. So while a lot of places are doing what would be called affirmative immigration work, reaching out, applying for immigration status, perhaps somebody who's come in and is seeking refugee status, we are often doing defensive work, trying to keep people from being deported, maybe because they have been picked up on a very minor, that's really common, a minor traffic violation or something like that. And so we're doing a lot of defensive immigration work on behalf of people. We're actually the only immigration defense shop in the entire state of Vermont, as you might imagine. We are really in demand, and it's really important work. The other thing that is going on at the Center for Justice Reform Clinic is the reform piece, increasingly working on expungements, clemency, pardon work, and advocacy. And so those are the 9 clinics. Just to give you a tiny taste of like some of what might be going on in those, the environmental advocacy clinic is our core, like original environmental clinic, and it is our #1 impact litigation clinic. They are going to take the sort of big cases that are what could go to court. In general, no lawyer wants to go to court. I'm just going to tell you that right now. You want the best possible outcome for your clients, but if you can get that without the court, without needing to go to court, that usually is best because nobody knows for sure what's going to happen in a courtroom. But anything in the environmental advocacy clinic could go to court. And so you're really going to learn some major court skills. Some of the things our environmental advocacy clinic has done right now, we've actually had a lot of litigation focused on protecting national forests. Actually, we've had some real success in New Hampshire, so much so that now we have got some people providing us actually with some funding to do some of the similar work here in Vermont. But then we've done other. It is not just local. The environmental advocacy clinic recently had some filings to protect communities from toxins that were related to relicensing of a dam that was in northeastern Oklahoma. It's actually been, that's working also with our environmental justice clinic because it's really common that our biggest polluters in this country often are in locations where we have communities of color, indigenous communities, communities that have been historically marginalized. And so it is very common that our environmental advocacy clinic and our environmental justice clinic will work together. Another thing our environmental advocacy clinic has had success in recently was an action out west to stop the roundup of wild horses. So that's been a big one. It's really been quite exciting. Back to like the environmental justice clinic, another piece they were just involved in recently was the filing of an amicus brief that opposed damaging federal dredging project that would have been in San Juan Bay in Puerto Rico. So I think that also gives you a sense that we are not just here in Vermont. Something that was here in Vermont, some of you may be aware, Vermont has suffered pretty seriously from some floods the last 2 years. And so our environmental justice clinic partnered with our small business law clinic. Actually, the small business law clinic took the lead on this and handled a tremendous amount of disaster response work. Lawyers are hugely important after a disaster strikes. And so our students really made all the difference. They went out and did pop-up clinics. They are still doing pop-up clinics because initially you need to do the filings with FEMA to get money if you have been damaged, if you have suffered from the flood. And then sadly, it is just a given that there will be appeals. And so now we are helping people through the appeals process. But then also, again, in all of these different advocacy skills, our environmental justice clinic students have been advocating in the Vermont legislature for a bill that would provide funds to help restore small businesses and nonprofits that have suffered in floods. And it very notably, I think importantly, has a provision that would prioritize assistance for businesses that were owned by persons of color, Indigenous people, and new Americans, groups that often struggle the most in a situation like that. So those are a handful of things. The Transnational Environmental Law Clinic is great for students with international interests. We have a very strong presence working on environmental issues in China, as well as other parts of Southeast Asia. Trying to think of a handful of other things. The South Royalton Legal Clinic is absolutely the best way if you want to just get into court. They are in court all the time, making a huge difference. Pretty much on a weekly basis, our students are getting in and securing protection orders for victims of domestic violence. They are representing children in cases where there is a high contest, high conflict divorce. We actually go in and represent the kids. And then the work we are doing, it's really nice, just with this wonderful reminder in this last little bit. After Veterans Day, we have a pretty substantial grant we were just given to represent veterans all across the state. And the difference we make for veterans has been incredible. Some of that is like literally veterans work, so VA benefit upgrades. But we can do work on behalf of veterans that is much broader. So it might be related to their housing status. It might be related to employment, to guardianships. We can do simple wills for them. And so it's a real broad base. I'm going to take a sip, and I know there have been questions popping up if somebody wants to share with me whatever has been asked.
Sure. While you're taking a sip, we have a question. It just went by. Are clinics in other states authorized for credit if you are able to participate in them?
I'm sorry. Apparently I drunk too fast. Are clinics in other states, say that again, Shirley, I apologize.
Are clinics in other states authorized for credit if you are able to participate in them? I think they're asking if you can get credit for working in the clinics.
You should be able to. I think the big difference is there are, like if you are looking at the residential program at Vermont Law and Graduate School, you're essentially guaranteed either a clinic or an externship, because that is how you get your experiential credits. There are a lot of residential programs that don't make that guarantee. And that's, I would say, is problematic. But at this point, I think all law schools have at least a clinic. Many of them don't have anything nearly as robust as we do. All of our clinics you should ask questions if you're looking at other schools about who teaches their clinics. All of our clinics are taught by full-time professors at the school, which I actually think makes a huge difference. I know it makes a huge difference. One of the big things is all you have to do is look at the press to know that lawyers have giant caseloads in general. And so one of the really great things about having professors teach our clinics exclusively is their caseloads are so much lower. That's one of the great things about clinics, is by these professors teaching you, their caseloads are low so that they can spend time giving you feedback. And so yes, schools have clinics. They should be for credit. That should be what a law clinic is doing. But the variability of quality really is mixed across the country. So I guess let me stop and switch over to externships, because I think, of course, that's what I do. I happen to like them a lot, but also the other reason that I think they're super important is that every single one of you on this call, if you are thinking about joining our JD program, then you have the potential to do an externship. And the other thing that is phenomenal about externships, well, you're going to hear lots of things I think are phenomenal, but they can be done anywhere in the country, and they can be done in any practice area. So, for instance, if one of you that is thinking about the OHJD program, but you are disappointed because you're thinking, oh, I really wanted to be able to do that veterans law project. It sounds great, but I'm down here in Texas and I know I'm only going to do the OHJD program. That's really disappointing. There are other options. Honestly, this is essentially a circumstance I had in a session I did for a current OHJD class just the other night. Well, we just talked about an externship. So for this student, what we are going to do is work with her to find an organization in her area in Texas so that she can get some practical skills there while she is doing an externship through the OHJD program. And now externships, it's really important to understand that an externship is not just going off and like volunteering for an organization. You do spend time working in a place, but you're also taking a course for credit at VLGS. And it is taught by a professor. It could be me, or it could be one of a couple other professors. This is probably one of the things I'm happiest about, is this school puts a lot of resources into its externship program. There are a lot of schools where there is like a single professor. They may not even have a professor title. There's a lot of schools who have a best instructor or a staff position who are managing 100+ students. Right now we have 3 full-time professors and an adjunct, all working externships. And we teach a course that provides significant support while you are doing an externship, and actually even before, because we really help you through the process. So any of you are thinking, oh, I'd love to do an externship, but I don't even really know what that means. I don't know how I'd find a placement. The whole idea terrifies me. That's a really important piece to me too. I think that actually, to me, that's a huge equity issue. We have a significant number of students who are first-generation students. And I think that externships are one of the best ways to level the playing field. I want to make sure you have the support you need to find that job, that externship that gets you to the post-grad job too. And then when you're in the externship, you are still taking this class with me or somebody else, and we are helping you develop a set of goals, steps you're going to take to accomplish those goals. We're helping you navigate the relationship with your supervisor, how to get truly quality feedback. And we're working you through this whole experience. And then there's mostly the relationship is between you and the supervisor, but there are like 2 check-in points throughout the semester to really move the whole situation along. And so it's really terrific. And the externships can be, there's a handful of requirements, not a huge surprise. You do have to be supervised by an attorney or a judge. It could be full or part-time. If you're in the OHJD program, it is more limited. It's only a part-time, but that's because you're in a part-time program. It can be anywhere in the United States. Trying to think of the other things. It can be at a for-profit law firm, or business. It can be at a nonprofit. It can be in government. This semester, I'm teaching the first set of OHJD externs. It's been phenomenal. I mean, I've been teaching externships for a long time. I'm having so much fun teaching the OHJD externships. They are currently in a district attorney's office out west, a public defender's office in the south, an office of the inspector general for a major federal agency in DC, a large, actually international solar development company, and then a private firm in the upper Midwest. So that has just been a blast to work with them. So those are my OHJD placements. Just a handful to give you an idea of my residential students, lots of different law firms all around the country. The Department of Energy, EPA, there's lots of federal stuff. Lots of nonprofits, the Climate Defense Project, lots of government, North Carolina, oh, this one's actually a lobbying entity, North Carolina Sustainable Energy Association, different courts. For people who are trying to figure things out, what they want to do, one of the best places is like city and county attorney offices. So I have people in those types of places with the city of Philadelphia, here more locally in the Rutland County, that's on the western side of Vermont. We tend to attract a lot of students who are really interested in some of the civil rights issues. I do have somebody working with the EEOC. They're down in the Florida office, but I also have somebody here in Vermont working with the Human Rights Commission. Actually, I have two people there. With NOAA, with the South Carolina Department of Health and Environment. What else do I have? A federal bankruptcy court, lots of prosecutors, lots of public defenders. There's no better place to get litigation experience as a young attorney than with a county level prosecutor or public defender. So yeah, I guess let me pause there. I know I have been talking at you a lot. There's plenty of other stuff I could say, but I'm going to see what types of questions I have.
You've got a question where someone is asking for you to give an example of a veteran's case in the SoRo clinic, something that they're working on there.
Sure. Let me think about this. I was just looking if I have any of the specific details. It really, the veteran stuff, I kind of love the veteran stuff. There is nothing typical. I mean, I have to say that first. So anything I give you is not going to be what they do every single day. But like, I know there was actually one, so like if I do a real, like, we're gonna go with like sort of military actual matter, there was a benefits upgrade case. And there's all sorts of reasons why why, you know, very well maybe somebody who is retired military or current military or military spouse. We have our admissions team knows better than me, but we have a not a small number of people in our OHJD program who have some ties to the military. So folks who have ties to the military will know, I mean, there are many different reasons why people get discharged with a other than honorable discharge. And sometimes over time, as we've learned, right, more about mental health, about impacts of war, all sorts of things, trauma, there are really good reasons why we can go back and we can make a very strong argument with the right evidence for why a discharge should be upgraded. And I know that there was a case fairly recently where a veteran, what he wanted more than anything with that discharge upgrade, because so often what you're looking for is to make it easier for somebody to get a job, for somebody to get moved into some sort of supportive housing. What this guy wanted more than anything was access to some of the social pieces. I'm trying to remember. I swear it had something to do with like a veterans motorcycle club, which, you know, it sounds sort of funny, but if that is your connection, if that's the social piece you want so badly, And so we were successful. I mean, and this guy was just thrilled. But there have also been much bigger things. There have been a lot of issues lately. Some of you may have seen this in the press with a housing protection that we should have had, that we supposedly had for veterans, that really has sort of gone awry. And we've done a lot of work on that to protect and keep vets in their homes. And so those are a couple of examples that I know we have done a lot of work around.
Mhm. We have a question from Danielle. She knows some people that own their own law firms and wondering if she could be doing an externship when she becomes a student at one of those firms.
Very likely, almost certainly. I or one of my colleagues checks every single placement before we would approve it. It's rare that we don't approve things, but for instance, if somebody has worked at a place before, volunteered at a place before, we have what we call the qualitatively different or broader rule. So the academic reg is you cannot work in a place where you've been before unless the experience is going to be qualitatively different or broader. And this should make sense to you. You need to learn new things. That's why you're coming to law school. And you need to learn things that are legal in nature. In general, this has been a really easy provision. Actually, I think 3 of my 5 students I've got this semester are in places that they had some sort of relationship with before. And so then when that's going to happen, we just talk about, okay, what have you done before? What are you planning to do in this coming semester? How are we going to make sure you're going to have a really good learning experience? And so then we go forward. The other things that I can think of that could come up there, I do approve placements where there is a single lawyer, like a solo practitioner, but I'm very cautious about it. And I talk students through that and what the dangers are. Hopefully, a high quality, ethical solo practitioner has a plan for what would happen to their cases and their clients if something happened to them. But a student who is externing with a solo practitioner is taking a bigger risk because if something happened to that person, if they got sick, if there was a family emergency, and they were unable to continue the externship in the middle of the semester, that student could be put in a situation where it would be difficult to earn their credit. So I'm really cautious about approving solo practitioners. And then the other one is, in general, I will not approve an immediate relative as the supervisor. So if it's your mother, your brother, your grandmother, I will not let that person be your direct supervisor. But otherwise, absolutely, we've had great, that's one of the best ways sometimes is to work with people you know.
And can you be paid while you're doing your externship?
So another great question, and there is an academic reg exactly applicable to that too. And it's going to sound like you can't, but you can. The academic reg on that one says you cannot receive compensation unless, so the unless is really important, the director of the externship program or her designee, their designee, determines it will not impact the quality of the educational experience. So what happens is usually the student first, but then me or one of the professors talks to the placement. And the issue is, does the placement understand that this first has to be an educational experience? I honestly, in 8 years in this job, I've said no once. What I need to know is that the placement understands, even if you are the very best law student we have ever had, because you are new at this, you are going to be slower at it than, attorneys who've been doing this a long time. And so I need to know that they understand I want them to give you different types of work, not just the same task over and over and over again, so you keep getting better at it. And I also need to know that they're going to be willing to spend time giving you feedback on your work so that you'll get better. And as long as we have that discussion and they're willing to do that, because, especially in a private practice setting, they can't bill for the time that they spend giving you feedback. That's what I just have to have that conversation. And as long as I believe it's still going to be a good learning experience, then absolutely. And it's a slow turn, but we are getting there with more placements paying. I do feel like I still have to warn you that the majority of placements do not pay. I hope, I mean, it is a turn. Slowly we're getting there. More places are paying. I hope we get to a point soon where they all pay, but we're not there yet.
And another question is for a residential JD student, can they do 2 externships or can they do an externship and a law clinic?
That's a great question. I'm so glad they asked that. And I'm going to answer it broader than just residential. Yes, 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 please. Lots of experiential. So it's so good for you. It is so good for your integration of what you've already learned. It's so good for your job prospects. It looks like it's even good for bar passage. So residential students, some of them do 2 externships. You can't do 2 at the same time, but you can do them in 2 different semesters. You could do a clinic and an externship. You could do 2 clinics. You could do, 2 clinics and externship. Any combination like that. Similarly, for the OHJDs, you could do simulation and externship. You could do 2 externships. I think at this point, we are looking at the more experiential, the better. The bar is changing in July, starting in July of 26. So for every single one of you, probably, you are going to take this. You certainly are not going to take the older version of the bar. And this newer version is much more experiential. That is what they are talking about. And so the more skills you have, the more practice you have with the skills, the better off you should be for bar passage. I loved this. Dean McCormick, the dean of the law school, teaches civil procedure. Some of you may be sitting in on one of her classes. And I love this tradition too. We have a student appreciation day, the first day of exams. Faculty and staff bring in food and feed the students breakfast and lunch. And Dean McCormick has regularly made cupcakes, and she puts a number on the cupcakes. And when you pick a cupcake, she asks you what federal rule of civil procedure corresponds to that number. So here's your warning. If you are a residential student, if you take one of those cupcakes, you better know what rule of civil procedure corresponds to that number. But one of the recent times, she kept asking students, what helped you learn those rules? And I'm sure she was anticipating something from her class, or was hoping for that, and hoping she was getting insights on how to be a better teacher. But I also really appreciate, I mean, she's a great dean. She came and told the clinic folks that it was their time in the clinics. They took all of that knowledge. I mean, I've watched her teach. She is a really phenomenal professor. I want to be really clear on that. She's a really great teacher. And so she gave all of our students, all the students in her classes, all of this base knowledge for civil procedure. What are these rules? How do you look them up? What do they mean? But then our students were able to go and enroll in the clinics. And that knowledge that Dean McCormick had given them came to life in these real cases where things mattered for people. And so that's the piece that's really beautiful.
That's great. We've got a question from James asking, how competitive are the clinic placements? And do most students get into their first choice clinics?
You might not, okay, so you've got 3 years if you're a residential student, and so that's what we're talking about for clinics, right? You might not get into your first choice in your 2L fall. Because we prioritize the students who are closest to graduation, if that makes sense. So the 3Ls would have the best shot at getting their first choice. I'm not sure I know of odds are extremely good that by your 3rd year you would get your first choice if that's what you wanted. Yes, and honestly, if you are here and you are really interested in an area, I mean, another really lovely thing about especially being a residential student here too is this is a small campus and we all get to know you. So if you're really interested in the work of the Food and Agriculture Law and Policy Clinic, even as a 1L, even though you're not going to do a clinic as a 1L, you should go meet Professor Emma Scott, who runs that clinic. And she's going to be at all sorts of events, and talk with her and let her know about your interest and that's one of the reasons you're here. And if she knows you have that kind of passion, she's going to want you in her clinic. So you're going to apply and it's going to really help. I mean, that's what she wants. The professors here want to get to know you. So you have to apply. I'll say that you have to apply. Everybody who wants a clinic is going to get a clinic, and you maybe will not get it the first time you apply, like your 2L fall, but you certainly can get it, I think, by the time you're ready to graduate.
And Alexandra is asking a question which may be on many of the other people's mind in the audience. What are the big differences between an externship and a clinic? The more we talk, the less I understand what a clinic is versus the other experiential opportunities. I'm sure it's all very confusing.
I'm sorry. Yeah, I mean, yes, the clinics are here on campus, basically, period. And they are taught here on campus completely by our professors, period. Like, that's a clinic here in South Royalton on our campus, exclusively taught by a VLGS professor. An externship is outside of South Royalton. Yes, you have a VLS person who is helping teach. Like, I am an externship professor, but I'm really teaching like a professional identity formation class. The externship is really, think about an apprenticeship. Maybe that's a good word to compare with an externship. It is out at an entity that is not the law school. So it is going to be out at some other organization, government, nonprofit, law firm, business. You are working there, putting in hours there with a supervisor who does not work for the law and graduate school. And that is the externship. You're doing it there with support from somebody at VLGS who you're taking a class with, but it's outside in the non-South Royalton world. I hope that helped.
Yes. And here Danielle is asking for clarification for the online hybrid. The option is externship and simulation clinics, correct?
Yeah, externship and simulation, or you could go to South Royalton, but we know that realistically that's not going to happen for the vast majority of OHJD students. So yeah, simulation or externship, or both.
And Gladys is asking, can you do a clinic during the summer?
Oh, that's a great question. Yes, clinics can be done during the summer. Simulation runs in the summer. The second part of the simulation runs in the summer. Externships are not in the summer. Externships are fall and spring.
All right, we've got a little bit different question here. How does it work taking the bar in 2 states after graduation if we are not from Vermont?
Oh, you all are way luckier than me. You used to have to sit and take it in 2 states. No longer, well, mostly no longer does that apply. You should get more information from our academic success people, but the truth is we now have this, and this is why you should follow up with academic success, because it's not exactly the same for every state, but there is now a multi-state bar exam. And a lot of states recognize the scores from one state to another. So you will actually, in all likelihood, select a single state. Well, you have to sit for the bar in a single state. No matter what, you sit for the bar in a single state. And then many, many states, at this point it's in the high 30s, will accept scores from other states, and you can transfer your score in if it's high enough. Each state gets to pick its own score that you have to have. But if you have a high enough score, there's paperwork you have to do, there's fees you have to pay, but you can transfer your score in and you can practice in multiple states. Not every state does that. Some of you who live in Florida, I don't remember if there were Florida, I think I did see people, Florida does not transfer scores in. They really don't want those retirees practicing and taking up any of their bar space. But there are the majority of states will let you transfer scores. So you probably want to talk, actually, some of the admissions people can give you the right context. There are a handful of states that it's different, but for most states, you will just be able to transfer your score. Yep. Oh, perfect. I can see Dan put up the list is a website where you can see which states.
Yeah, and it's about 40 states or even 41 states right now that are uniform bar exam states. So you, as Beth said earlier, you really all have a nice advantage compared to the way it used to be.
You don't want to take 2 bars. It was not fun. One is bad enough.
And Gladys is asking, do you have to take the bar in Vermont if you're doing the online program, or you can just take it in the state you live? Yeah, we're a national. Well, Beth, I'll let you take the question.
Oh, no, I mean, go ahead, Shirley, please.
We're a national law school with, ABA accreditation, and you can sit for the bar in any state. The only stipulation is only with the hybrid program, and that is New York State just requires you to petition the state before you'll be permitted to sit for the bar. But every other state, you can automatically sit. And if anyone else has any more questions, feel free to either raise your virtual hand and say them out loud, or you can type them in the chat, whatever you prefer.
I mean, I'll just say, if all people are typing, if they are, I mean, one of the things that's so great really is most of this stuff is real world. And so it's so engaging because what you're doing matters. And so other times you're just trying to get the work done for yourself. I mean, and that's important, right? You're going to care about your grades. You're going to care about how you're doing. But once you get into like the clinics and the externships, the work you're doing, like it matters. You're going to help this person have a result that really matters in their life. And it's just so exciting. It's really fun. I mean, we have celebrations at the end of every semester for each clinic to talk about what they've accomplished. And I mean, watching the students just glow is phenomenal to see what they've done.
Danielle is asking for clarification. So if Florida does not allow other states,
you get to sit in Florida's and take Florida's bar.
Exactly. That's the way it would work. You just have to study up again and take another bar exam. Oh, we've got a question from Danielle.
Hi. So my friend just moved to Florida and she moved from Boston. So she was an attorney in Boston and then she had to retake the bar in Florida. So I don't know if that question sounded crazy, but I was just trying to find out, since Florida doesn't accept other bar results, does that mean if you take the bar in Florida, it also doesn't transfer to other states?
Yeah, because it's referred to as reciprocity.
Okay.
So yeah, if one state won't recognize the other state, it goes both ways.
Okay. I know they do that with the real estate license too in Florida. Okay. Thank you.
And if anyone did not get it's almost time to conclude here, but if anyone did not get their questions answered or you come up with any others, I'll put my contact information in the chat. You're welcome to reach out to me and I'll get your question to whoever you'd like to ask it to. Just as a heads up, we're having, yes, in Israel, and anyone here on this call, if you'd like a fee waiver, you can just email me and I'll get you a fee waiver code. But upcoming, we have an event taught by, as Beth Locker mentioned earlier, our academic success department. They're going to do an info session on December 4th at 6 p.m. on how to prepare for law school, which I expect will be very helpful for you all. If you're working on your application on December 13 from noon to 1 p.m. will be an info session on application tips and tricks. And on December 30th, we'll have an info session on the flexible JD programs. It'll be an overview of the residential JD programs as well as the hybrid programs. And that will be December 30th at 5 p.m. And all these are at Eastern Standard Time. The links are in the chat if you wanted to sign up for any of those events. And if you wanted to sit in on the Dean McCormick Civil Procedure class, the last class is next Tuesday from 6 to 9:20 p.m. You have my email address in the chat, and you can just email me and I'll hook you up with the link for that.
And then I just want to say, I just stuck in the chat a link to the page on the website that has information on all of the clinics. And I will say right now, the externship page needs work. So call me or email me if you want more on externships. But the 9 different clinics each have their own page, and that link I gave you can take you directly to all 9 clinics. So you can get more information there on each of them if you want to learn more.
Great. Thank you all again for joining us, and special thanks to Beth Locker and Dan and Ellen for joining us as well tonight. We look forward to seeing you again soon.